All right, Michael. So the first thing that I want to delve into is the notion of solution concepts. Now, we've actually talked about various solution concepts in Game Theory 1 and Game Theory 2, but we never actually, I don't think, sort of explained what they were or even pointed out that we were talking about different solution concepts.
So we need to talk about the concept of solution concepts.
That's right. We need to talk about the concept of concepts because it's concepts all the way down. All right, so here's the basic idea. A solution concept, or really just a concept, is basically just a rule for predicting how a game is going to be played, right? So the one that we spent the most time on was Nash as a solution concept, and particularly Nash Equilibrium. And so in the language of solution concepts, you're basically saying that there's a rule, there's a kind of formal process by which some particular game is going to be played, and that is you're going to play with the idea that you're getting into a Nash equilibrium. An equilibrium in general and a Nash equilibrium in particular. Okay, so does that make sense? So we talked about a few others and mentioned a few others. So we talked about Nash at length.
And what made Nash a Nash was that all the players were playing in a way that they couldn't unilaterally improve, right? So they were doing best responses to whatever it was the other player was doing.
Right, but actually that wasn't really what made it Nash so much. Well, it was, but the big emphasis there is actually on equilibrium. The idea is that you were in an equilibrium because it was in no individual's best interest to move or to change in any way. And the particular kind of equilibrium we talked about was Nash equilibrium.
Okay.
So in fact, I want to talk about correlated equilibrium because that's a different kind of equilibrium. That's still an equilibrium, but is different from Nash and in some ways turns out to be better under certain circumstances. And I'm going to even argue that, in fact, we use correlated equilibria all the time in real life. I'll give you an example of that at the end.
But is correlated so related to Nash?
Yes, it is, and in a very particular way, and I will tell you how in a moment.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're going to talk about correlated equilibrium because that's what I'm interested in, but I shall point out that there are several others. There's trembling hand, there's Stackelberg competitions, there's subgame perfect. We actually talked about subgame perfect, and when I say we, I mean you.
Right, in the context of multi-stage games, sequential games.
Right, game theory too. But it's still a solution concept. So this notion of concepts and solution concepts is not limited to simple matrix games, but actually all of these work whether the games are repeated or not.
Okay.
There's also Bayes-Nash. We did not talk about that. Coco, you mentioned Coco, but I'm not going to talk about that. And there are a whole bunch of others, and they just kind of go on and on and on. And I think when I talk about correlated equilibrium and explain how it's a solution concept and tie it back to Nash, you might see various other ways you might come up with solution concepts.
Okay. I mean, trembling hand sort of scares me a little bit, but are we going to go into any details about that and Stackelberg?
No, I am not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about this.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about this. And you know what? I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about that. Sound fair?
Sounds like a segue.
Sounds like a segue.